Although this process got off to a very rough start, I do think that this looks really beautiful, and I think that this is going to be a delicious gumbo. I really hope it turns out whenever it's done. Welcome back. I know it's been a few days. We were in Charlotte for the Mad Monster party, but I am back now, and since it is Mardi Gras, I thought it would be really fun to try making a gumbo. So for full disclosure, I have never made gumbo before. I've actually never tried gumbo before. So this is not only going to be my first time making it, it's going to be my first time trying it, and I'm doing it with only Dollar Tree ingredients. But I am going to be trying to do it as authentically as possible. I will be following someone else's recipe. The recipe I'm using is from Gimme Some Oven, which is a beautiful food vlog. She takes amazing food pictures, and so I'm hoping mine looks anything like hers by the end. So with that being said, I am ready to get dinner started, so let me show you everything I got, and then we'll hop on over to the stove and get cooking. So as far as base ingredients to make the gumbo, I picked up 2 packages of hot smoked sausage, so this ends up being about a pound of sausage, 4 cans of chicken, so this will end up being about 2 cups of chicken. I also got some chicken bouillon powder because they didn't have any chicken broth in stock, and this is a better value anyways. I got a can of diced tomatoes, 2 bags of frozen seasoning blend, a bag of frozen okra, and some garlic, and then also some rice for the side. We are going to need to season our gumbo. Traditionally, this would be Creole seasoning. Now, you can buy this particular Creole seasoning at Dollar Tree, but I find this stuff to be incredibly salty, and we do have a lot of salty elements already going on here. So feel free to use this if you want, because this is one ingredient. However, I'm going to be making my own Creole seasoning. So I know this looks like a lot, but let me break this down. These are the ingredients we're going to be using to make our own Creole seasoning. This is going to be the Emerald Lagasse Creole seasoning. So we have paprika here, onion powder, garlic powder, oregano, cayenne pepper, thyme, and black pepper. And as you can see, all of this did come from Dollar Tree with the exception of my cayenne pepper. I couldn't find any when I was there today. And I may have a bottle of Dollar Tree cayenne pepper in my pantry. I will have to check. And if I can, I will use that, because I like to use all Dollar Tree ingredients whenever possible. Now this is optional, but since this is a Louisiana style gumbo, we should probably get some Louisiana style hot sauce to put on top and spice things up. But I know not everyone likes spicy, so feel free to leave the hot sauce out. So beyond all of the ingredients I just showed, the only other things you will need are oil and flour. Now you can use standard vegetable oil, some people use bacon fat. Whatever you have on hand you can use, and I did look at a bunch of different recipes to kind of gauge some similarities between them, and it seems vegetable oil is most common, but use whatever you have. Now, this is a lot of ingredients. This is more ingredients than my normal Dollar Tree recipe because this is more so about making an authentic gumbo than it is about making a budget gumbo. But there are plenty of ways you can make this more budget friendly, and we'll talk about that. And mostly it's just going to be about cutting back on some of these ingredients because I do anticipate this to be a relatively large meal just based on the overall quantity of things that I have here. So it's probably going to fill up my soup pot pretty full, and I'm going to have enough to put in the freezer for sure. The good thing about this is that everything will still be relatively simple because a lot of the ingredients are already chopped and prepped, especially with buying the frozen seasoning blend. The canned chicken is already shredded. We do have a little bit of prep work to do though, but it's very easy prep work. We're just gonna have to slice our sausage and prepare our Creole seasoning. So I'm gonna start off with the sausage. So each of these came with 2 sausage links. So I have 4 altogether. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut those on the diagonal until I have cut through all of my sausages. There are all of our sausages cut up and ready to go. I'm just gonna set this aside while we work on the Creole seasoning. Starting with our paprika, 2½ teaspoons of that, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, more or less depending on how spicy you like things, 1 teaspoon of oregano, and 1 teaspoon of thyme. I'm going to mix this all to combine, and we are not going to be using all of this today. We're just going to be using maybe 1 to 2 tablespoons of it, so the rest of it can get stored in an airtight container in your pantry. All right, there's our homemade Creole seasoning, and we are now ready to get started on our gumbo. So YouTube hasn't really met my soup pot. This is Dolly. She is a cast iron skillet, and she is some amount of quarts. Let me see if I can figure it out. She is 5.7 liters. It looks like it says 6 quart at the bottom, but she is a ginormous and very heavy soup pot, and that's what I'm gonna be using today to make the gumbo. So I'm gonna start off by preheating my burner to medium high-ish, and we're gonna start by browning off our smoked sausage. We're just going for a light browning on this sausage, nothing too intense, and then we're gonna set it aside so we can start on our roux. All right, I think we've got some good color on that, so I'm gonna go ahead and just remove this from the pot. I am also just gonna go ahead and rinse this out because, like I said, this got a little bit hotter than I wanted it to, and I don't want that kind of burnt bits becoming part of my roux. I know that technically that is flavor, but that is burnt. So I'm gonna go ahead and rinse that out real quick. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I totally burnt that first batch. Since this is a new oven and I am learning the heat mechanics of it, I'm not a big fan of dual burners, the ones that have a small burner and a big burner. I just find that the temperature settings are too finicky, so I did have to start the roux over, and I'm pretty sure I also got a 3rd degree burn on my tongue trying to test it and see if I burnt it. Was fairly certain that I did. If your house smells like popcorn, you probably burnt it. And also, this was supposed to take about 30 minutes, and mine was brown after 5 minutes, so that was another indication that it was way too hot, and I tried to turn the temperature down, but it was too late at that point. So we are starting another batch over, and unfortunately though, that was pretty much all the vegetable oil I had. I did have a splash after that, and for the sake of not having to go to another store, I am in this case using a mixture of oil and margarine to make the second batch. So I've got about 2/3 of a cup mixture of oil and margarine, and then the same 1 cup of flour, and 30 minutes on the clock. So hopefully this batch turns out better. So I'm about halfway through making the roux. I've got 10 minutes left on my timer. I'm just keeping an eye on things, and we have hit the golden blonde stage. I did have to increase the heat ever so slightly. I'm being very cautious with how much I increase the heat so as not to burn this a second time. But this is looking really good so far, and we just have to keep it going until it turns a nice rich brown. Think of the color of like melted milk chocolate. It has been almost 30 minutes. It's been 27. I've been kind of just checking the temperature on things, trying to get it brown but not overly brown, and this looks about the color as the video that I watched to make this. So I think we are about ready to add in our veggies. I did turn the heat down a good bit to make sure that nothing burns, and then we're just gonna kind of dump in our frozen vegetables. We're gonna start with the 2 bags of seasoning blend. I've already gone ahead and prepped these. Just opened up the bags. So I'm gonna dump in my 2 bags of seasoning blend at this point. Still half of it in the process. That is gonna cool things down significantly. Let me see if I can salvage some of this up real quick that I spilled. Dump that in. Let that cook down for just a couple minutes. The recipe said to cook it until the vegetables soften, but that was based on using fresh vegetables, not frozen. Since I'm using frozen vegetables, they won't take nearly as much time to soften, so they should be totally fine. Just maybe 2 to 3 minutes until they kind of heat through. And again, we're kind of working on low heat here. That's just my oven because it's apparently temperamental. And this whole time I've just been kind of sitting here stirring, kind of just scrolling on my phone and stuff like that. So it's really not that bad. You know, find something to do, listen to a podcast or something like that, and it should be totally fine. So the next step is to add in our broth. I am using Bouillon because that's all they had, but we need 6 cups of broth total. So I'm just gonna add 6 cups of water and 2 tablespoons of Bouillon. It does say to add this slowly, so I'm probably gonna add it 2 cups at a time. and then mix to combine and kind of let it reconstitute itself before I add any more liquid to it. And actually, I'm only going to add 5 cups of water because, I will explain why, because the canned chicken that I'm using already has liquid in it, and that is technically chicken broth, so it will add a lot of extra flavor, but I don't want it to add too much extra liquid to this. So I'm just gonna add 5 cups of water and let the canned chicken be the extra cup of water. Oh shoot. I was supposed to add the garlic. Well, I guess we're just adding the garlic now. In goes about 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. I was supposed to add it with the vegetables and saute it in with the vegetables, but we're just gonna have to add it now. I also meant to add in the chicken bouillon powder, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that while the sauce thickens up. Again, that was 2 tablespoons of chicken bouillon powder. So once we get to this point, I'm gonna go ahead and dump in the rest of the ingredients. That is going to be the 4 cans of chicken. We're also gonna be adding in the can of diced tomatoes, our bag of cut okra, and 1 tablespoon of our prepared Creole seasoning. We can always add more later if we need to. In goes our smoked sausage. And I'll check back in with you in about 10 minutes. Although this process got off to a very rough start, I do think that this looks really beautiful, and I think that this is going to be a delicious gumbo. I really hope it turns out whenever it's done. I hope Michael enjoys it, and I hope I get plenty of this to put in my freezer for later. So at some point in the cooking process, you're gonna have to cook some white rice, either in a rice cooker or on a stovetop. I'm actually just gonna use microwave rice because this is just for Michael and I, and this is just the simplest option right now. So I went ahead and microwaved that for 90 seconds, and then we're gonna top it with our gumbo. So I did taste this while it was cooking, so I already know it is fantastic. I did add a bit more of that Creole seasoning, but that's just my personal preference. I almost always tend to double up on seasonings, especially when I know something is going to be served over plain white rice, because white rice by itself is not very flavorful, and I just find that it tends to dilute down the flavors of things. So I like to double up on the seasonings for that particular situation. But here is our Dollar Tree gumbo. This looks and smells amazing. Like I said, I've already tried it, but I am gonna try it again on camera for you guys. It is time to do the Dollar Tree gumbo taste test. I'm gonna stir in the rice. The rice should help cool it down a little bit too. I grew up in the South, but I've never been a big fan of okra. Over the weekend, we went to a barbecue place, and I did have some fried okra, and it was pretty good. I've never really liked okra because of how slimy it is, and I remember it being very slimy when I was a kid, but I've tried it recently as an adult, and I didn't hate it as much, so I almost thought about leaving it out, but for the sake of authenticity, I did not. Let's see. Oh man. That is so rich and spicy and decadent. I can see why people love gumbo. I can see why this is a very cultural dish. And actually, it's cultural in more than one place. In doing my research to make this video, I found out that this is actually has origins in West Africa, more so than it does in Louisiana. I thought that was a really interesting fact. So we got okra, we got a chunk of chicken, we got some sausage. I actually really like the okra in this. It provides a nice contrast of texture because it's almost kind of meaty in its own regard, but like a slightly different kind of meaty. I'm not really quite sure how to explain that, but as someone who's never really eaten okra, this is a very different kind of texture. And I actually really am enjoying it in the soup particularly. I guess you would call this a stew. A soup or more of like a stew. But this is really good, and I would definitely recommend it. Is it the cheapest meal I've ever made? No, but if you're limited to Dollar Tree ingredients, this just goes to show that just because you're limited to Dollar Tree ingredients doesn't necessarily mean that your meals have to be boring or can't be made from scratch, because I made this almost entirely from scratch using just Dollar Tree ingredients. So I am really happy with this, and I will see you again soon. I hope you have a lovely Mardi Gras.